We've already got cars heading out onto the circuit, though, for our first Mazda MX-5 racing of the weekend. If you weren't with us yesterday, you missed a pretty entertaining race that was won by Jack Harding, only his third victory of the season. He won that race over James Cossons in second and Sam Smith in third. Sam Smith, the championship leader, coming into this weekend by 14 points over Jack Harding, and Jack Harding was able to take 4 of those points away from him. So with 2 races still to go, still over 200 points left on the table, there are just 10 points between them in Smith's favour. So Sam Smith has the advantage, but given these conditions, given how competitive the racing is, he's far from guaranteed to hold on to that. Also add into the mix here that we have a slightly jumbled grid, because the grid for our second race of the weekend is based upon the second fastest lap times from qualifying. So whereas yesterday Smith and Harding started right next to each other on the grid, today they are separated slightly, mainly as a result of Jack Harding not getting a particularly quick second fastest lap. So the formation lap then is about to get underway. We'll run through the grid, I think, before we go any further into this, because the formation lap shouldn't take too long here on this short 1.2 mile Indy circuit. It's Declan Lee that gets himself on pole position. I seem to recall him being on pole position yesterday. Yes, he was. So double pole this weekend for Declan, with Richard Amos alongside. He is not running in the pro class, so he doesn't score points for the main championship, but he could well be a factor in the championship battle, since his teammate is currently the championship leader, Sam Smith. James Cossons then is third on the grid. He is also third in the championship now by just 1 point after yesterday's race, and our championship leader Sam Smith starting from the outside of row number 2. John Langridge had a disappointing run to the back end of the top 20 yesterday, 5th on the grid for him this time, with Patrick Fletcher starting just a couple of positions behind James Cossons in their fight for third in the championship. Then on row 4, Adam Bessel and Jack Harding. So Harding has some work to do here to overturn this 10-point deficit to Sam Smith. He'll have to do it from the outside of row number 4. Then at the back of the top 10, it's Braden Fletcher and Alex Miller, with Will Morris and Chris Richardson on the 6th row of the grid. Will Blackwell Chambers is there on the 7th row alongside Michael Nibbs. Then it's Nick Rutter and James Warrior, row 8. Row 9 then for Simon Fleet and George Grant. Lee Britton and Javier Brook round out the top 20. Then it's Tom Grensinger continuing his journey into Mazda MX-5 racing, having had much success in Caterhams over recent years. And he's got Mazda MX-5 veteran Martin Tolley for company on the 11th row. Matt Pickford and Kevin Sylvain are on the 12th row of the grid. And then on row number 13, just behind them, we will have Simon Baldwin and Clive Powells. Then it's Stephen New and Tom Selden, Martin Heath and Scott Wright, with Andrew Flynn and Clive Chisnell towards the back of the field. Not quite at the back though, because then it's Liz Walton who does bring up the rear on the 17th row of the grid, 33rd on this mammoth grid. They're being given 2 green flag laps, by the way, because of the change of conditions. Although they qualified in the wet yesterday, their first race was essentially dry with a few damp patches. Scott Woodwist, that is not the case though this morning.
No, and I have seen MX-5 SuperCup racing conditions this well. I particularly remember there's a couple of cases at Donington Park where it was absolutely hammering it down, and on that occasion, of course, there were drivers that, about 1 or 2 incidents that people got involved in, and it was tricky. So they're going to have to be sensible out there. They're going to have to know, obviously, yes, there's a championship battle, but if you can just bank the points, particularly with Sam Smith and Jack Harding, all they can do is it's a bit of a difficult situation, because some of them might feel, if I'm going to try and get myself up towards the front, Jack's got to take arguably more risks than Sam does, because Jack has a 10-point lead. Sorry, Sam has a 10-point lead. Jack has got to try and make those up, but to try and make those points up, he's got to finish ahead of Sam, and to do that, he's got to pass cars and then pass Sam. So ultimately, he's got to make a decision in terms of how much risk he wants to take, and if he is taking that risk, when he looks at any particular pass, is it worth it? Is it on? Is it definitely a pass that he can make without making a mistake? What line does he take? How much water is there out there? Because if it keeps on raining, yes, it's completely wet, so they know exactly what direction they need to take on setup. But on top of that as well, if it carries on raining, the weather conditions, like they can do if it's intermediate, they can change corner by corner, lap by lap. So I don't envy Jack Harding's task out there this morning in this second race. He'll be hoping that for the third race, if he can get some more points back on Sam, that he is an easier task for him, particularly as a reverse grid. So maybe that's something he's thinking about, maybe in the back of his mind, because there is a partial reverse grid, maybe to get somewhere in the top 10 that he can possibly benefit from that and get towards the front ahead of Sam. He's got to do more maths and more. He'll be under more pressure, I think, than Sam will. Sam will have the pressure of trying to maintain the 10-point championship lead, and because you can't drop scores from his final 3 races, not making a mistake himself. He'll have an ally in Richard Amos up there as well, just because he's just in the club class, but he is his teammate, so, you know, naturally as a teammate, he'll have been instructed in some context to play some kind of a rear gunner formation if he can, and it's going to be tricky to do so. So there's so many stories that could still be played out here, so many different scenarios, but I think essentially all they want to do out there is, despite the conditions, just get out there and race and just see what unfolds. And I think the ultimate thing that I've been told both Sam and Jack is just keep it on the black stuff, don't make any mistakes. But of course, with the weather this bad, that's very much easier said than done.
Yeah, because all season long we've been talking about a point here or there. You know, Jack taking 2 points out of Sam taking 4 points out of him. If you non-finish for whatever reason in either of the two races today, you could lose 100 points, and that is essentially game over in the championship. So they must finish the races. You sense that if either one of them were to have a non-finish today, that would probably decide the outcome of the championship. So the front row is Declan Lee alongside Richard Amos. The championship contenders then, Sam Smith is the white car on the outside of row 2. The red, grey and blue on the outside of row 4 is his championship rival Jack Harding. The 5-second board goes out then. We're ready to go racing here for the penultimate time in this season. Out they go, off towards Paddock Hill Bend. They rush, and a good start made by Sam Smith. They go 4 wide towards Paddock Hill Bend for the first time. James Cosland's breaking through the middle. John Langridge looks up the inside of everybody, and Sam Smith, the championship leader, is on the outside line. That is a dangerous place to be. Did he manage to survive that? Going through Paddock Hill Bend, up the other side they go. It's Declan Lee with the race lead. There's a spinner further back in the pack. Cars off to the left-hand side of the road, but it looks as though Sam Smith and Jack Harding are together already as they make their way through Druids. Nick Rutter is off towards the back of the field. So too is Will Morris, 177. Those are the two cars in the barriers heading up Halewood Hill. That was rather dramatic.
Yeah, I think Lee Brisson was possibly caught up with that. It was a red MX-5, so whether it was him or somebody else, I have to check. No, it might be Chris Richardson, actually. There's Rutter and Will Morris. I think the other car that was involved, it comes past, is it Chris Richardson? I'm trying to check the number on the side of it. It is... It's 80-something, I think it possibly was, but these, in fact, are going to head their way through. I think it's possibly Chris Richardson, I think, in 96. So, fortunately, they were the three that got involved in that. Would not surprise if we do get a safety car, because obviously that's going to be, have to retrieve that. It's on the inside of the approach to Druids. Safety car has been deployed, so the runyourfleet.com safety car making its first appearance already. But, of course, that was essentially, well, essentially cold tyres, obviously, because the weather conditions won't have helped with the temperature. The tyres trying to go into an incredibly slippery track, and ultimately, again, forgive me for saying so, but I would have been surprised if someone didn't fall foul of that, because the conditions really are that unfavourable at the moment, and unfortunately both Rutter and Morris, as much as we don't want to see that happen, fortunately they're the two that have come to blows along with Chris Richardson. We didn't quite see it start. All we saw was one car saw them lose the back end of it exiting Paddock Hill Bend going down the hill, and unfortunately one of the cars goes through there. When you're in the middle of the pack, there's so much spray around, you forgive the other drivers around you for not being able to see anything. So I have absolutely 100% faith that none of that at all was malicious or purposeful at all. It's simply just because someone lost it on the back end, and you just cannot see in these conditions. Chris Richardson, I'm afraid, that might be the end. It's a race, maybe the end of his day as well, unfortunately, if that's the case, which is a real shame. But yeah, wet conditions catch just a couple of people out, and it's unfortunate to see, but that is the nature of racing in these conditions.
Yeah, as they went 4 wide for the lead into Paddock Hill Bend, if you'd have told me there's about to be an accident, I would have believed you. However, it wasn't the leaders that had the accident. They actually came through that really well, which is a real testament, actually, to the driving talent out there, because that should not work in the dry, let alone in the wet. It didn't really work, though, for Sam Smith, because Smith went for the lead around the outside of everybody and ended up losing a spot and dropping down to 5th. The order then at the end of the opening lap, Declan Lee holds on to the race lead. James Cosland moves up to 2nd. Richard Amos is 3rd. John Langridge 4th. And then the two championship rivals, having been separated by 4 positions on the grid, are nose to tail again. Sam Smith 5th, Jack Harding in 6th place. But it is the championship leader that has the track position advantage for the moment. Then it is Patrick Fletcher in 7th. Adam Bessel is 8th. Braden Fletcher is 9th. And Will Blackwell Chambers came across the line in 10th position. So in a way, that opening lap went really well for Jack Harding. He picked up 2 positions. Sam Smith lost 1, but we haven't really got into a race rhythm yet to see which of them has a better handle in these conditions, because that's the other factor here. Car setup will be critical. They've had a little bit of everything this weekend. They had very wet conditions yesterday morning, not dissimilar actually to what we've got now, maybe slightly more favourable. And they also had those dry conditions later on. So if one of those 2 teams has managed to figure out a wet setup that perhaps works a bit better than the other, that could prove to be the key here in this championship. This is a golden opportunity for either of these 2 drivers to take a good haul of points before the championship decided this afternoon.
Yeah, and of course every single point counts when we remind you that there are no drop scores for any of these 3 races, so keeping it on the road is going to be the most critical thing just to even bank the points that you need. And having both Sam Smith and Jack Harder, the 2 cars on screen right now, having them nose to tail together, well, that does help Jack a little bit, of course, because coming to this race he has got a 10-point deficit to make up. So again, we said one of the hardest thing to do was to catch up to Sam. Actually, he's had a little bit of good fortune that Sam has come back to him, because he's had a few cars around and he wasn't able to pick up the place he wanted to throughout that opening start. I have to say, big guts from, shall we say, I was trying to pick the word very carefully there, big guts from Sam Smith to not only go full weight, but to be on the outside, because that could so have easily ended in disaster. He must have been quite literally millimetres, or even not even that, centimetres, inches away from just touching the outside curb, because of these conditions, the one thing you do not want to touch in a race car are these curbs, particularly at high speed, because if you just get a little bit of a wheel on them, even if they're just a little bit more slippery and a little bit less grip than you have on the circuit, that's it. It can just send the car spinning. So he was incredibly brave, but also incredibly lucky on the outside line not to get on that curb and to find himself spinning, which could have been, well, unthinkable.
Well, I suspect that probably played a part in the shunt that we did have further back in the order, the way that one car suddenly snapped sideways in the pack. We've seen it happen countless times here in the past in wet races at Brands Hatch, because that curb on the exit of Paddock Hill Bend, you've got the curb and then you've got a little bit of painted concrete, which the drivers are not supposed to be driving on. You can see another example of it there, actually, coming out of Graham Hill Bend. But that green painted concrete is even more slippery in a way than the curbs. So once you run out there, these are rear-wheel drive cars, remember. They're not very heavy either, which in the wet is not a good thing. You actually want a bit more weight to sort of keep the car planted, help it dig through the surface water and find some purchase on the asphalt underneath. And when these cars, because they are so lightweight and because they are rear-wheel drive, when they get onto a bit of paint, it does have a tendency to send the car spinning. We're talking a lot, by the way, about the Pro Class Championship, or the overall class, the overall championship, I should say. That is sort of the main feature, but I touched upon this on the grid. Richard Amos, who is up there in the mix, actually, in 3rd place at the moment overall, he leads the club class. And Scott, there are 3 different classes of driver. The cars are all identical, but the drivers graded slightly differently, and they all have their own individual championships to chase as well.
Yeah, they do. So the club class was brought in as a legacy of what was the MX-5 Super Series, because that was a sub-series when SuperCup went off to go and compete on the TCR UK package a couple of years ago when that first started. There were still some drivers that wanted to race a Mark III on the same package as the existing Mark 1 MX-5 Championships. That was created as a way for them to still race, still run with the same things they would do in the Mark 1s, and because of that, that grew in popularity and got good. When the situation with the support package changed for the MX-5 SuperCup, the decision was made, and it was quite an obvious decision, to bring everyone back together. And it actually was a massive benefit, because then the interest that was built through the MX-5 Super Series to get people racing in a Mark III then meant that when they crossed over into the MX-5 Super Cup, they only added to the existing grid, along with all the interest that the Super Cup was generating as well. So from last year, interruptions aside, from obviously reasons including the pandemic, it really did make sure that going into 2020 and throughout the season, we had bumper grids, as we have done this season as well. And it is just a little bit of a slightly less pressure class, because some drivers just want to go out there and just race against drivers of their own skill level. And the pro class is there for ultimately more career-minded drivers and the fastest drivers that you'll find on the grid. The club class is there for either drivers who are just debuting, or a bit more sort of, I don't like using the word amateurs, more enthusiasts, shall we say, in terms of drivers that just want to go out and just race their MX-5 Super Cup car and not be too bothered about being towards the front, so they can drive against like-minded people and fellow people that are getting into it for the first time and just want to learn the ropes of the cars. And you do see some drivers, Xavier Brook, who won the club class last year, who has graduated from club to pro. So it can work. It's a good way to build your confidence and just to kind of get used to the Super Cup cars. And then if you feel you're quick enough, and I'm certain drivers that Richard Amos, if he's around next year, should definitely be in pro class next year, given some of the overall results he's achieved, then in that sense, it shows that it works. It shows that it's a fantastic class to get people started. So if there's anyone who wants to give the SuperCup a try, but they're just starting out, or they're a bit unsure in terms of they haven't done too much racing, or aren't too fussed up being right towards the front, the club class is the best thing to do. In terms of the championship battle, well, Richard Amos has been trying to claw back points because he had a really bit of a rough middle of the season. He sort of had quite a few DNFs. He had an awful meeting at Anglesey where he had an incident where I think he had a brake issue which caused a rather nasty accident up at Rocket, which he, and thankfully the other driver, Nick Dunn, involved, was absolutely fine. He then had a non-finish from the first race at Stetson, so that's 4 races where, he picked up 2 fastest lap points on the race he retired, 2 of the races he retired in, but that's 4 races in a row where he literally scored out a possible 404 points in class was 2, and so that really did help hamper him. But throughout the rest of the season, he's pretty much tried to claw that back, and ever since the second race at Snetterton, apart from one race at Cadwell, he has won the class every single time and practically taken fastest lap in the class every single time, which means that he really has clawed his way back up in there. And he's someone actually from that rule where you can't drop scores, where he will actually massively benefit. So he's someone who I'm sure will certainly be Hankey's lucky stars that that's in place, because any points he can try and grab back to keep himself in the top 3 and benefit from if any of the other guys make mishaps is certainly going to be a benefit. So at the moment it's Rich was trying to claw his way back, but it's a scrap at the moment between Kevin Sylvain, the former bike Superstock 1000 racer, and Clive Powers has been a long time stalwart of MX5 SuperCup for ages, and that's looking pretty close at the moment, and we'll get more of a clearer picture in terms of where they are, given the fact that Richard is quite far ahead once we go for the rest of this race and at the conclusion of the second race. So looking quite close at the top, and quite a battle forming between those three at the front, at the head of the table. Yeah, well, Kevin Sylvain is 20th overall at the moment, and I put him 3rd in the club class right now. Clive Powell's, meanwhile, is 1 place ahead of him, so they're essentially 2nd and 3rd. Powell's outscoring Sylvain by 2 points as it stands. I haven't calculated fastest laps yet, partly because the timing screen doesn't make it particularly obvious which of the club class drivers has the fastest lap, and also because we haven't yet had a full racing lap, so I'd imagine those fastest lap points will be doled out accordingly as we go deeper into the race. There is the very badly damaged Will Morris car. Nick Rutter's car actually seems to come out of that slightly better, and actually I'd say the worst damage of the 3 was the one that carried on and went into the pit lane on its own, the Chris Richardson car. Looking at where they started then, Morris and Richardson shared the 6th row of the grid, and Nick Rutter was on row 8, so I would imagine it maybe wasn't Nick that triggered that, it was one of the other 2 that had a moment. There is Nick Rutter, actually, he's back in the race. That was well picked out. So Nick Rutter, that car, a little bit of tank tape, which as we know fixes everything, and it's sent on its way. Whether it's tracking quite right awaits to be seen, but I guess in these conditions that perhaps isn't quite such an issue. So with the scene almost cleared, you just saw in the background there the recovery vehicle taking the Will Morris car back to the paddock. That should be well and truly out of the way by the end of this lap. So I'm anticipating a restart this time around. We have got only, though, 3 3/4 minutes to go, because these races are just 15 minutes long. So that is a real shame, the bulk of this race being spent behind the safety car. Ordinarily, these races would be 20 minutes, but because we've got such a packed schedule to get through today with all of the Formula Ford activity, which is coming up straight after this race, remember, with our 2 semi-finals, that has meant the BRSCC have had no choice but to cut a little bit of time from some of the races. But we'll still get a handful of laps here, hopefully, because the lights are out now on the runyourfleet.com Jaguar safety car. It is making its way towards the pit lane, and now Declan Lee becomes the control car, with James Cosson 2nd, remember, Richard Amos 3rd, John Langridge 4th. The championship battle, though, is between the cars that are sitting 4th and 5th. The white number 1 of Sam Smith, and the grey, red and blue number 43 of Jack Harding. Harding needs to outscore Smith in this race to try and get that gap down to single figures. At the moment it's 10 points between them, with just over a race to go essentially now, 2.5 minutes or so left of this one. Right then, the safety car is in, the speed starts to build once again, the spray starts to get thrown up in the faces of the drivers that aren't called Declan Lee. He's the only one with a relatively clear view, because he leads the field across the start-finish line then to restart the race at the end of 7 laps. 2 minutes and 30 seconds left on the clock. Is anyone going to try and make a move into Paddock Hill Bend? It's hard to see, actually, through the amount of spray. Everybody just about managing to stay single file. Jack Harding there is still a car length or so behind Sam Smith, but James Cosson's here having a bit of a look, actually, at getting past Declan Lee there. Jack Harding goes to the outside line into Druids. That may well be where the grippier side of the road is, and he'll use that now to try and build a bit of a challenge here against Sam Smith. They are actually the 2 closest cars in this lead group, sitting in 5th and 6th. So Harding not wasting any time here, Scott, in trying to apply some pressure to his championship rival. Yep, he's certainly trying to pressure him a little bit here, and of course in these conditions, rather than trying to make a bold move, if he can't make a move, trying to pressure him into some kind of mistake will be helpful. Richard Amos holding on to 2nd place overall, still by far and away. There's a bit of a club car, little wiggle as he went through circuit, trying to splash with the puddles. Smith was off. Smith was a little bit off the road. There's a couple of cars where Patrick Fletcher was off there too, so don't you need to say it's incredibly treacherous out there. Richard Marston, he's gone for a rotation down at paddock Graham Hill Bend. He gets going again. The former Radical and OSS and all sorts racer, amongst other things, as he comes across the line. Now Harding is going to try and put himself alongside down the outside line. He will have more grip as Richard Amos tries to go for the lead on Declan Lee. Now he has won outright a race before, as well as being club class when he did that at Snetterton done that a couple of times this year. Meanwhile, Ryan the outside gets Jack Harding. He's over onto the curb. He's on the very slippery part of the circuit, which you do not want to be in these wet conditions. He'll try and get on the outside line, but Smith is trying to get the car stopped. Took a couple of bites at the apex to try and turn in. They're both now on the tail of John Langridge, who's having quite a good run so far in 4th place. But Richard Amos, certainly, I think if there's any proof that I've said that he should be in pro class next year, this is it, particularly in wet conditions. He's all over the back of Declan Lee, who was pretty quick seller in the wet conditions in qualifying yesterday, proving that here this morning as well. But Amos is absolutely on his tail. He's back up the inside again this time. Exactly. James Cousins.
They're
both off the road.
Oh, I don't believe it. That didn't quite work. And John Langridge, who just overtook James Cousins, could benefit from this. Sam Smith into the back of Cousins, Harding to the outside. We're about to start the final lap. Thank goodness, because it is all kicking off in these atrocious conditions at Brands Hatch. The championship battle taking place behind. Harding's wide again there. He's in the gravel. Jack Harding is off the road. A bit of contact, I think, with James Cousins there. I don't think it was intentional. James probably didn't know that he was there. So it is still somehow a minor miracle, this. Declan Lee that leads the way from Richard Amos in 2nd. It's Langridge 3rd, having a much better drive today than he did yesterday. Sam Smith in 4th, Cousins 5th, and Harding in 6th. So somehow out of all of that, it's Smith that benefits. He gains a place, he gains 2 extra championship points, and now just needs to hang on to this position for another half a lap, although he might actually be trying to improve upon 4th by getting himself ahead of John Langridge. They drop down the hill towards Graham Hill Bend for the last time in the race. Can Richard Amos do this? He's very good at Surtees. The move didn't work last time quite as he planned. Has he got a better idea this time? He's got a good run down the Cooper Straight, looks to the inside of Declan Lee. He's going to take that tight line again. Not quite as tight this time though. He wants to stay away from that standing water, which he still manages to splash through anyway. One more corner to go then, up towards Clearways. He goes to the inside. Declan Lee has the wider line into the final right-hander. Amos now switches to the wide line as well. It will be a bit of a drag race to the line. This Amos is quicker through Clark Curve. He's getting a bit of a slipstream as well, but I think the start-finish line might just come a little bit too quickly for him. Declan Lee will come across the start-finish line to win the penultimate round of the Mazda MX-5 Super Cup. 2nd place to Amos, 3rd place Langridge, and Sam Smith in 4th place overall. That is 3rd place though within the pro class, so 96 points will go the way of Sam Smith. James Cousins comes home 5th, and Jack Harding loses another 4 points to his championship rival, although Harding may have set the fastest lap. I think he did. Of the pro class drivers, I reckon Jack Harding with a 1 minute 7.2 he's actually slower than Declan Lee, so he won't even get the bonus point for that. So the gap will, I reckon, go back out to the 14 points that it was coming into the weekend. Well, that was rather dramatic. Just to round out the rest of the top 10 then, it was Braden Fletcher actually in 7th, ahead of Patrick Fletcher after Patrick went off after the restart. Michael Nibbs in 9th, and Will Blackwell Chambers rounding out the top 10. In club class then, obviously Amos takes the victory. It will then be, I reckon, 2nd place for Clive Powells and 3rd for Kevin Sylvain. So Powells will take another couple of points out of Kevin in their club class championship battle. Well done to Declan Lee. That was a very, very well-deserved race victory, and his first in the series, I believe.
I believe so, yeah, if that is correct. Then congratulations, Declan. He's been working quite hard. He's had a bit of tumultuous ups and downs throughout the season the past couple of years, but certainly weather conditions would have certainly played some kind of part to help that, I'm sure. But that just shows his prowess, I guess, in the wet, and a well-deserved victory nonetheless. So I'm certain that he'll be absolutely delighted with that. I know his dad Vernon will also be incredibly happy with the fact that his son Dex made to pick one as well. So, which is great stuff. So, which is brilliant stuff. So, yeah, congratulations to Declan for that. What we believe is his first victory, and if it is, amazing stuff. Well done.
Right then, well, Declan Lee with what we believe to be his first victory in the MX-5 Super Cup, certainly his first of the year, held on there from Richard Amos after that scary moment on the penultimate lap where they made contact at Surtees, and I'm sure they'll both have their own versions of that story to tell. To Richard, John Neal.
Yeah, thanks very much, Andy. We're looking at Declan there in the car. We'll try and get him out and get him without crash helmet so he can get his hair wet. We've got the winning stuff coming over. A couple of the guys having a little bit of a chat. You can see John Langridge having a chat with Richard Amos in the 6 car. Championship-wise, of course, all still to play for. And I think our podium later on in the day, we'll be able to catch up with not only the race winners from our second race of the day, but also the champion when we get our new champion as well. Declan's just extricating himself from the car, so I'm going to see if we can grab a quick... Declan, don't go away. You've got a video on camera to do, and I know you've practiced for these because we had a little bit of a chat yesterday. First of all, many congratulations on your first win.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I was saying I'd practiced all this at the Motorsport UK Academy. Unfortunately, the only way I used that was after I had a crash. I was straight into an interview. So I've never been on a podium in cars. I've never really started from pole. I've done 6 years of karting and gone from there. So thank you for Hills Motorsport to get me up here, and it's just been a journey the whole time. And I'm honestly speechless. Thank you to Covers who are helping me get up here, and I hope we can take them out next Wednesday and show them a good time.
Well, that'll be good. Let's go back to the race because the conditions were horrible. There wasn't too many racing laps, and a bit of contact, I gather, earlier on in the race.
Yeah, there was. I didn't see what happened, but it was my teammate Will, so I hope he's all right. And then throughout the race, I was battling with Amos there, and he went for a move that wasn't really on, and we both ended up on the grass. He actually let me through again. So people, say bad things about Amos, but he's a real team player. So thank you, and I'm about to go give him a hug. So.
Oh, that's nice. We'll see if we can get that. Go and do the hug, and we'll do it on camera, which would be really nice to see. So watch this. This is an exclusive. There we go. Look at that. A BRSCC Mazda exclusive. And a hug. And Richard Amos is coming down. Richard, obviously, you want to get out of the rain. Well, I thought racing drivers were real men. We're out in this all day. We might be scuppered on the signal. Anyway, congratulations, second place, fine race. Love the Mazdas. Tell us about your weekend and your race.
Yes, we haven't had a weekend like this, I think, since Silverstone, so everyone's a bit rusty in these conditions. But yeah, it's a lot easier to drive out there than it looks today. It's probably better like this than when it's greasy. So yeah, it's good. It's good fun. Good
call by the organisers, really, with the water out on track, wasn't it, to get those extra laps in at the start and also run while the clearing up was going on.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and. It's a shame to see people crash. I've been in that position before and it's not nice, and it's good that no one got hurt and it's all good.
Yeah, apologies to keep you out in the rain. I know you've got to keep your suit dry because you've got another race later on, so much prep for that?
Well, it depends what the rain, what the weather does, but I think it's supposed to be much the same, so probably just fill it up and go again.
OK, mate, well done on second place. Great race. Thank you for talking to us. And our last interview is going to be with John Langridge. John? A guy I know from many BRSCC Formula E or races, certainly in Fiestas back in the day. How long have you been in the Mazdas now?
This is my second year in the SuperCup, and I did a few years before that in the Mark 1.
Right. And you enjoying it as much as the Fiestas that you had so much success in?
Yeah, very much so. It's a different challenge. They're very different cars, but great fun to drive. And as you can see, the racing is amazing.
Enjoy that in the wet?
Yeah, couldn't see much. It was a good job there's a bridge at the top of the hill, otherwise we'd all be skating off. But yeah, it was really good fun.
OK, well done on third place. We'll let you get back in the dry and get your silverware for third place and look forward to seeing you later in the day.
Thanks, Richard.
John Langridge, thanks very much indeed.